Hello friends, how are you doing today? I'm having a great day in my wood shop. Today I am actually Pippi Longstockings and the Great Pumpkin all rolled up in one because I'm always having a blast. I'm going to show you I've been making these beautiful picture frames because today I'm actually Stephanie, a wonderful old world craftsman of a carpenter. So I've already pre-glued my pieces. I take my little gun. I shoot it.
What the Buffalo Bill?
Now, as we were watching that first clip, I was kind of glancing around that basement to see if I could locate a mason jar full of teeth with a pair of tin snips laying next to it, but he must have moved it out of the camera's view before he started recording. And one more thing. Why couldn't that old timer just show us how to make a cool picture frame without looking like he is auditioning for the part of Buffalo Bill in the modern day remake of Silence of the Lambs? Anyway, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for joining me. So I have a very quick and slightly crazy weekend Clown World update for you guys today. And as usual, we have no time to waste. So let's get into it. Now, if you place your attention on the screen for a moment. So we see a lot of extreme body modifications or body mods, as the cool kids say, as far as tattoos and piercings and such here on the channel. Now, this one isn't nearly as extreme as we've seen, but the ears and makeup definitely make this young lady stick out.
Why? Why would you do that to yourself?
All right, let's keep it moving with this Carmelo Harris voter. Now, this clip is kind of long. It's a little over 2 minutes long, and I'm going to play the whole thing because she tells a story about her husband getting arrested. And what really stood out to me is that somebody actually married this woman. That has got to be the worst torture imaginable for any man on this planet. Roll it.
Trumplicans. Say it with me. Donald Trump is a 34-count felon. The charges weren't dropped. No, they weren't. No, you're thinking of the documents case. The documents case that was thrown out by a Trumpy judge because the Trumpy Supreme Court gave him presidential immunity. And she was like, oh, well, this is probably going to fall into that. So I'm just going to go away. But he didn't have presidential immunity to falsify bank records, to give hush money from the campaign to a star. He didn't have presidential immunity for the 34 felonies that he committed. Sorry about that. You see, Donald Trump has caused so much chaos. I know that it gets confusing. It really does. And I know you're wondering, well, why isn't he in jail? So are we. But guess what? That's just how the justice system works. All right? Like my husband, years ago, over a decade ago, he was asleep in the passenger side of a vehicle driving through Texas, just through it. And under his seat was an empty vape pen that contained residue of concentrated THC, which any amount, even just like a little residue, is considered a felony in Texas. So he got arrested. And a year and a half later, he had to get his sentencing, which he was facing 5 years in prison for that. Being asleep in the passenger side of a vehicle with an empty vape pen underneath it. So anyway, it takes time. And I know that personally. And it sucks. And I'm really sorry about that. And I'm super sorry that you're confused. But he's a felon.
Shut the f*** up, okay? Shut the f*** up!
Fellas out there, back me up on this one. That lady's voice was like nails on a chalkboard. And it wasn't so much the sound of her voice, but the tone. That condescending tone would drive any man fucking crazy. Oh, and here's another one. Roll it.
I love how all the women for Trump are like, I'm not voting for Kamala just because she's a woman. It's so insulting to women to just vote for a candidate because she's a woman. And it's like, babe, we know. We know, babe. Don't worry. We know that identity politics aren't suddenly going to sway someone who's voted against their own best interest for the last 8 years. Unless it was like a white, straight Christian male.
Just when I think you've said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
All right, next up we have this individual who is a biological man that identifies as a trans woman and calls himself a lesbian, talking about how he's glad he doesn't look like a cis woman. I thought that was the whole point, no? Roll it.
I keep seeing cis women get all upset that people in their comments are telling them that they look transgender, as if that's the worst thing in the world. Oh, what, you're upset because people think you're hot and cool? Because I know it's not that you think that they're telling you that you look like a man, because that would be transphobic, now wouldn't it? I am so glad that I look transgender and not like a joyless cis hag. Well, y'all stay safe out there.
You look ridiculous.
All right, next up we have this individual who identifies as a trans woman and says the big win this week was confusing the shit out of his son, making his son call him mom instead of dad. Roll it.
The last 3 weeks have been a bit challenging, but bit of a ray of sunlight, a little win, which is actually quite significant for me. It's been about 8 months, but my son has started to use my correct pronouns and correct himself when he genders me incorrectly. This has been a really progressive thing for him. I haven't forced anything on him. He was always able to call me whatever name, whatever pronoun he wanted. My hope was that obviously by seeing my progress and other people treating me and seeing how it impacted me, that he would make the change, which he is starting to. So I see it as a real sign of his acceptance, his growth, his growing understanding. But it's just an amazing sense of validation for me, and a really clear sign that, our relationship is fine and he accepts me and is starting to understand a little bit more. Still got a long way to go, but it's a huge step. So it's my big win in the last 3 weeks, amongst a lot of other rubbish. And
You fucking crazy, man. You sound insane. Do you realize that? You should be medicated.
It is very sad. It's always the kids that suffer the most with these narcissists. Anyway, next up, so this individual who is also a biological man that identifies as a trans woman claims if a straight guy dates a trans girl, it is still a straight relationship. Roll it.
Dates a trans girl, it's actually still a straight relationship. How? Well, because trans women are women, and a man dating a woman, well, that's a straight relationship.
This sounds very gay.
All right, next up, we're going to hear some stand-up poetry. Well, actually, I think they call this slam poetry. They should call it racist slam poetry. Roll it.
White boy says, I had to wait in line at Starbucks today, so I know about oppression. White boy retweets NPR and watches Jeopardy for fun. White boy won't admit it, but he likes it when you get the answer wrong. Likes the feeling of knowing just a little bit more than you do. White boy listens to indie music and paints his life a 500 days of summer shade of mope because the whole world loves him the least. White boy is glad Green Book won the Oscar and not glad that Trump is the president. Not glad, but safe. Happy to know he will not have to live in a world where white people are the minority. White boy says, aren't you white? White boy says he knows all about brown people because of all the Spanish girls he's dated. Says real tacos have radishes on them. Says horchata is Mexican titty milk. And I'm like, damn, I wish my titties were full of horchata. Or maybe I don't because white boy would just set me up at a hipster cold brew coffee shop somewhere and start turning a profit while I bust my horchichis in another episode of cultural appropriation at its finest. White boy thinks my brown mouth is dirty with every flip of my chingona tongue and every f*** you shouted at the Orange TV pendejo. White boy thinks my brown mouth, my brown friends, my brown life is dirty when I tell him that I am tied to this land, to my native Aslan tongue and the red dirt in my teeth. White boy responds by texting me a picture of a cartoon Pocahontas.
She's fit for a straitjacket. This broad's 3 ways towards the weekend.
Hey, real quick, before we go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to let this loop on the screen. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the same fellow we saw in yesterday's video who was sitting in his car singing a creepy version of the nursery rhyme, I'm a Little Teapot? Anyway, today's video is being brought to us by Amber Wood. Amber, thank you so much for sponsoring yet another video. I really appreciate the kind words and support. So once again, today's video sponsor is Amber Wood. Now, if you'd like to sponsor the next video and help support the channel, there is a PayPal link in the description box below, and I will say your full name as a sponsor of said video unless stated otherwise by you. All right, we've seen enough of this. Get this off the screen, please. Oof.
Maybe that would fall under the category of creepy.
Now, most of you know that every now and again I like to throw something positive in here so it's not all total doom and gloom. And since we heard those two women earlier that were so condescending and talking a bunch of nonsense, I figured I'd throw a slightly condescending woman in here that's actually talking common sense and logic. Roll it.
I'm sorry, I am so tired of the tens of thousands of just hard fours online being like, I'm voting for her because he's gonna strip all of our rights away as a woman. I can do that as a mom and a da. What rights, babe? What rights? He was already president, and how many rights did you lose? 0. He's trying to protect women's rights. What do you think it is when we have men in women's sports? We have men in our personal spaces. What do you think it is when dangerous men come over the border? That's what protecting women and children is. Oh, he already said he's not going to do a nationwide abortion ban. He's not going to do it. If anything, it's going to be state by state the way it has been. And guess what? If a state, 90% of people in a state want something, I think that state should have it, even if I don't agree with it. If you don't like it, move to another state. It's very simple. Stop with the propaganda. This is why people make fun of women. Use your brain. Use your brain, babe.
Wait a minute. That's the smartest thing I've ever heard anyone say about anything.
All right, guys, we're going to be wrapping it up with yet another clip that Vice President Chlamydia Harris is getting roasted for. I think that's how I'm going to end each video from here to the election, is all the clips she's getting roasted over. In this one, a reporter asks her how she's going to tackle inflation, and her response is mesmerizing. Anyway, things are clearly getting very crazy out there, guys, so please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Till next time, love you guys. Peace. Roll it.
And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up.
No shit, Sherlock.
And families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously.
The f*** are you talking about? The f*** are you talking about?
And you ain't black.